Following pressure from the Vatican, the German bishops have halted their efforts to establish what they call a synodal council. The bishops, shown here at a previous meeting in Rome, initially planned to vote this week on a committee that's preparing the synodal council, but they canceled the vote after the Vatican sent them a letter requesting as much. The synodal council would have been a governing body of the German church. The bishops hoped it would serve as a permanent continuation of the controversial German Synodal Way, which was pushing for a path for the blessing of same-sex unions, a female diaconate, and changes in the way the church is governed. The Vatican has been vocal about its discouragement of such a council and has made numerous efforts in recent years to intervene. To help explain these latest developments, we are joined in studio by our colleague AC Wimmer, editor-in-chief of CNA Deutsch. AC, thanks for joining us. What can you tell us about the Vatican's letter? Explain why Rome is opposed to the creation of this synodal council.
Thanks, Catherine. Look, the situation is really complicated on one hand, but on the other hand, it's really simple. The Vatican's reminded the German bishops and those pushing for those reforms that the way they're going about it is arguably not in line with the sacramental structure of the church, with the very way the church, the Roman Catholic Church, is set up, not the German Catholic Church. And that is something they're grappling with now, arguably with a way of a pause, perhaps a sign of compliance.
How have the German bishops been reacting to this letter?
So on the one hand, there's been some debate about it publicly, but most of the stuff that you're not hearing, the stuff that's happening behind closed doors, from the sources that we have, is telling us that they're extremely concerned because, on the one hand, they're juggling, of course, these concerns and the renewed interventions from the Vatican. But on the other hand, they're juggling what could arguably be the ghosts that they've unleashed themselves. The calls for what they think are reforms or what is debated as a reform and all the political demands that are connected to that. So that's a pretty heady mix.
The Vatican has not shied away from criticizing this synodal way, but this is the first time it seems the German bishops actually heeded its warning. Why is that?
I think there's a clearly visible red line here that they don't want to cross. There really is threat of a schism. And you can also tell that that's what's looming by the way things are being publicly debated, even by cardinals considered not very conservative necessarily, such as Cardinal Christoph Schönborn of Vienna, such as Cardinal Walter Kasper, who's a close theological advisor of Pope Francis, have come out with cautious words, cautioning words for the German bishops.
AC, is this plan for a synodal council in Germany completely off the table or just on hold? Do we know what is next for the German Synodal Way?
We know that it is on hold. I don't think it's off the agenda according to most of the people that we've spoken to, for good reason, because we know also that these statutes have been approved by the other side, if you like, of the German Synodal Way, which is the Central Committee of German Catholics. And it's ongoing in terms of the debate how what can be achieved perhaps through other means. So you might not have a synodal committee setting up a synodal council to perpetuate a synodal way, but you will have to find a way, even if it's just to dovetail with, after all, what is the Church's Synod on Synodality, which is due to kick off again in October in Rome.
Well, on that very point, putting this all into context, how does what's happening in Germany fit into the Church's global synod on synodality?
Spot on. That is indeed the question. And in fact, if I may, Catherine, one of the things that could pop out here is a really interesting result, namely that some of the things that have been put on the agenda by a process that is now thrown into question, may be thrown into question for the bigger process. And if that is what observers are concerned about, in particular also reform-minded cardinals, then we're in for a very interesting season here, not only in Germany, but also in the Vatican and the universal church.
Finally, AC, I want to get your take on this. What does Germany's synodal path reveal about the concept of synodality in general?
So that's a really interesting question as well, and it's a wider one that needs debating, not just for the Synod on Synodality, which after all the Holy Father has called for, but also that process in the beginning launched in 2019 and immediately criticized by Pope Francis in a letter that he wrote to the German Catholics. Can you have a process sui generis, sort of its own bat, if it's not a synod? The German Synodal Way is not a synod, and if it's not a plenary council such as we've had in other countries, well, the jury may still be out, but it looks like we're getting a verdict pretty soon.
Well, AC Wimmer, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.